A special day. We all are here to understand the Dhamma and to practice the Dhamma. First, you all are going to listen to a Dhamma talk. For this Dhamma talk, our topic is, the suggested topic is Dhamma in daily life. Dhamma. First of all, we have to understand what Dhamma is. Dhamma, basically Dhamma means, for us, for Buddhists, the teaching of the Buddha. Buddha has taught what is good. Not only Buddha, all religions teach us not to do bad, evil things, but to do good. But the Buddha has taught us something more, not simply good, because good for one becomes bad to other. One person say this is good, the other person says no, that's bad. So good and bad, the purpose of the Dhamma is not to just to teach us good and bad. That is just ethical level. In that level, we all can come to one particular place. All religions can put into one basket. In that level. The Buddha taught us another thing. Cultivate your mind. Practice, develop your mind. Buddha said, Sabba papassa akaranang. Avoid all evil. Kussalassa upasampada. Do what is good. These two levels, two things. As I said, all religions the same. That is what is called ethical level. The Buddha said further, Sachitta pariyodapana. Sachitta, your own chitta, your own mind. Pariyodapana. Sachitta pariyodapana. Tame your chitta. Develop, cultivate your chitta. That is the specialty here. That is what the Buddha taught us. So basically, Dhamma means the teaching of the Buddha. What the Buddha really taught is different from the religion, from our traditional accept. What the Buddha really taught means the 37 factors of enlightenment. But the Buddha has talked about many other things. So whatever he taught us can be condensed into these 37 factors of enlightenment. So the Buddha taught us some basic things for our daily life. First of all, let's see in our daily life, daily precepts. As laypersons, you have daily precepts. What are the daily precepts? 5 precepts. There are 5 precepts to each and every person. These 5 precepts are to be understood properly and to be observed. Not mere refraining, but we have to do something. So let's understand the 5 precepts first. The first of the 5, the first one is killing, refraining from killing. That is how it is put, refraining from killing. It is easy to refrain. I think no one here, you kill any being. You don't want to kill. You yourself not killing. It is easy. Then you can say, no, we don't kill. But that is not enough for the precept. You have to do something. If you don't kill, you to let live. Let beings to live. Then for that purpose, you have to extend your metta, karuna, the compassion. You have to be compassionate of beings. You have to help beings, help others, help other beings. In such a way, you are helping and you refrain from killing and you do something. There you see both sides, negative and positive. If you simply reframe, that is what is called negative side of the precept. The positive side is you to do something. Precepts, these 5 precepts, we have to understand, the Buddha has taught us, there are 3 ways that we break the precepts. 3 ways. What are the 3 ways? You can kill a being by yourself. You can take a tool or any weapon, you can kill yourself. That is one way. Or you can ask somebody else to kill for you. You don't kill. You ask your son or your dad to kill, or mom. That is also wrong. You ask somebody else to kill. That is also wrong. Or you can appreciate killing. You can approve killing. So these 3 ways we are breaking the precepts. Then the second precept is taking what is not given. Taking that which is not given. That is also the same. You can take what is not given, steal yourself. You can ask somebody else to do that, or you can appreciate stealing. The third precept, sexual misconduct. This is sexual misconduct. It is to be understood clearly. It is not sexual conduct, but misconduct. That itself is the same. 3 ways. You can do yourself, you can ask somebody else to do, or you can appreciate, approve it. Then the 4th one, telling lies. Again, you can tell lies, you can ask somebody else to tell lies, or you can approve telling lies. Then the 5th one is intoxicant, taking intoxicant, any sort of drugs, intoxicant. We don't want to intoxicate our mind. Our mind is to be kept clear, very clear, pure mind. Because our mind is a special mind. We all have to understand that. Human's mind is a special mind, which is a developed mind in comparison to other beings. Our mind is a developed mind. That developed mind can be further developed. It can be developed easily in comparison to other beings. Other beings, they have to go a long way. But we humans, we have developed mind. That mind can be further developed. That is what the Buddha realized. Buddha realized that human's mind is a developed mind that can be further developed to the perfection. That is what he did. The human perfection is the arahanthood, the enlightenment. The Buddha, the first enlightened one, first arahant in the world. So then he taught this Dhamma. So in such a way, we have to understand the 5 precepts, and we have to observe 5 precepts and refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from sexual misconduct, refrain from telling lies, and refrain from taking intoxicants. These are the 5 precepts for all lay persons. Then when we act, we are alive in society. We do things in society. When we do things in society, there are 3 modes, 3 ways that we act. These are called 3 modes of conduct. What are the 3 modes of conduct? Physical, verbal, and mental. Physically, we engage in things. We we do things. We work. Sorry. When we work with our hands. We walk with our legs. That is what the bodily actions. our bodily actions. Our bodily actions are, we can wrong actions. There are wrong actions and right actions. We can kill beings. We can steal. We can engage sexual misconduct. These are wrong conduct. If we can refrain from this, these are called right conduct. Those are the three conduct, bodily conduct. Then verbally, we can tell lies, malicious speech, harsh speech, and then frivolous talk. You see, 4 precepts, 4 things. Physically, we do only 3. Verbally, see how powerful the word. Verbally, 4 things. Wrong things. We can do wrong things. 4 wrong things. Tell lies, malicious, harsh, and frivolous talk. So if we are engaged in such talk, this which are called wrong conduct. Then mentally, 3 things mentally. Covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. We have to refrain from this bad conduct, wrong conduct. We have to refrain. When we refrain from this wrong conduct, we can come to right understanding. Right understanding. Where we can understand what is good and bad. What is good and bad? Wrong conduct or right conduct, we do this in 3 modes, as I said, 3 modes of conduct. These 3 modes we have to understand properly. Buddha once said to his son Rahula, Buddha said, Rahula, kimatto adaso, kimatto adaso Rahula. Adasa means mirror. Rahula, what is the purpose of mirror? Rahula, by that time he was little one. At the age of 7 he was ordained. The Buddha asked, what is the purpose of mirror? Then Rahula said, Bhante, to see the reflection, see the face. Like that. When you go to the front of the river, you can see yourself. When you see yourself, you can adjust anything if anything wrong. Like that, Buddha said, Pacchavekkitva kayena kammang katabbang. Repeatedly recollecting, do your bodily action. When you do your bodily actions, repeatedly recollect, repeatedly think whether you are doing good or bad. If it is bad, avoid. If it is good, do it. Repeatedly recollecting, do your bodily action. Pacchavekkitva kayena kammang khatabba. Then pacchavekkitva vachaya kammang khatabbang. Having repeatedly recollected, do verbal action. Then pacchavekkitva manasa kammang khatabba. Manasa, mind, mental actions. So this is how one has to do. We have to think in daily life. This is how we understand Dhamma in daily life. When we are going to do something, we have to understand whether it is good or bad. Good or bad. This is very important. Because some people, they don't know what is good and bad. They think good if it is good to them. If it is good to me, that is what is good. We don't sometimes think whether it is bad to others. According to the teaching of the Buddha, what is good to both sides. It should be good to both sides. Whenever we are going to do something, we have to think of whether it is good to me and good to others, both sides, not only good for me. Some people say, like smoking, for instance, smoke. This is my money. I earn, I can smoke. It's good for me. You think only yourself. You don't think of your mom, dad, and your spouse. After few months, years, you will die soon. Then is it good for your spouse? Good for your children? Is that good for your parents? Taking drugs. You have to think, taking drugs, you might say that my money, I earn money, I spend money. That's my money. But you have to think, what happened to me? It's not good to your health. First of all, you have to understand that it is not good for your health. That itself is the cause. That itself is the fact to think that it is not good. Therefore, I should stop it. If we are going to do anything, such thing which is harmful to ourselves, harmful to me, and it's harmful to others as well. Therefore, that is not good. That is what is bad. Therefore, it is to be stopped as soon as possible. What is bad is bad. What is good is good. Good is good to you, good to others. Now, today you decided to come to this place to listen to the Dhamma and to share your food with others. You brought some food, drinks and things, to share with others. This is what is called good. Why it is good? It is good to you, good to others. So this is the basic thing. Living in society, this is the basic thing. Some people, they don't see this even. They don't see that sharing is good. Sharing is good. They don't think. They see that if you share with others, what happens? You lose it. You lose your food if you give others. You lose your money. So why should we give? They themselves can work. They themselves have hands. They are strong enough. They are young. They can work and they can earn. Why should we give them? That is how some people think. That's not the way. That is not the right thinking, right understanding. Friends, right understanding is very important in the teaching of the Buddha. Now we talked about 3 modes of conduct. Of the 3, the third one is mental conduct. Of the mental conduct, the third one, I said covetousness, ill will and wrong view. Now as long as we have wrong view, not only view, we are heading the wrong way, wrong path. Wrong destination, ends up with the wrong destination. But if our view is right, suppose our view is right, we have right view, right understanding, then where we stand? We are starting the Noble Eightfold Path. You see, the Noble Eightfold Path starts with right understanding. Why it is called right understanding? The first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, you know the path of the path, there are 8 factors. Of the 8, the first one is right understanding. Right understanding, it is called right understanding because there are wrong understanding as well. What are the wrong understanding? Buddha pointed out, even in the time of the Buddha, there were some teachers. They said and they followed these things. Buddha said those are wrong understanding. In the time of the Buddha, there were 62 isms, views, which were wrong views. wrong views. They taught wrong views, wrong isms. So the Buddha pointed out that there are 10 wrong views. We have to understand these 10 wrong views, and then we can come to right view, right understanding. What are the wrong views? First, as I said earlier, people think that giving is not a good thing. Giving is wrong. We should not practice giving. Dana. Natti dinnang. They said natti dinnang. No point giving. If you give, you lose your money. You lose your food, drinks, clothing. Don't give. They don't encourage giving. They discourage giving. So that is a wrong view. Whoever says giving is not good, that is not the right view. Why? Giving is important. The Buddha taught giving is important because when give, you can eradicate your craving. The Buddha emphasized giving. So in other religions, other views, isms, they said, do not give. Natti dinnang. Natti yittang. Offering. You offer something to the virtuous one. Then there are people, they don't like that. They don't see the good of it. They see that it is bad. It's why you give. Even some people say, for instance, when you offer something to monks, nuns, the monastic, some people say, they themselves can earn. They themselves have hands. They are strong enough to do things. Let them to do. Why you offer them? Offering is bad. Offering itself is to be understood clearly that it is a good thing. When you offer something, you can be happy. You earn hard-earned things. You earn money. You earn things days, night, you work. When you work, when you do things righteously, you earn things. When you earn righteously, if you can give this, if you can offer this to the Buddha, if you offer this to the Sangha, you can be very happy. Now today you see, you prepared food. You prepared food on this holiday. You prepared this food, and suppose you just remain at home and eat. You make food, you prepare food, and you eat yourself. That's finished. You can't be that happy. But today, when you think of what you did today, you brought dana. You offer the first portion. You offered this to the Sangha. Now you can be very happy. Not only now, this evening, tomorrow, day after 1 week, month, years after, even on your deathbed, one day, just before you die, if you can think of this, oh wonderful, on that particular day, I offer something. I gave something to the Sangha, to the Buddha. Like that, you can be happy about that every day. But simply having food, can you be happy in such a way? That is why we have to give, we have to offer. And we can do some sort of sacrifices, some sort of offering. We can recollect the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. Like that. Natti dinnang, natti yittang, natti hutang. Like offering, giving, sharing. They don't see this good. They see these are wrong things. Buddha said those are wrong views. And some people, they don't see the importance of doing good and bad deeds. They don't accept the results of good and bad deeds. Natti sukata dukkatanam kammanam palam vipako. they don't see the results of doing good or bad. If you see properly, if you have right understanding, you know if we do good deeds, it's good. If we do bad deeds, it's bad. You see this. That is what is called right understanding. But some people, they don't know this. They don't see the good results of doing good, bad results of doing bad. They don't see such things. Natti sukata dukkatanam kammanam palam vipako. Natti ayang loko. Some people, they don't see that this world is there for beings from other planets, other worlds. We live in the world which consists of 31 different realms. In this world, there are 31 different realms. Material world, immaterial world, the sensual world, 3-world system. This 3-world system, there are 31 different realms. Beings are born again and again in these realms. We have to understand that for beings in other world, they come here. That is to be understood. That understanding itself is a right understanding. Natti ayang loko, natti paro loko. And some people, they don't believe, they don't accept that there are some other planets, other world, other realms. They simply think that we live here, we die here, finished. That is wrong understanding, wrong view. But we have to understand, we are not only here. Once we die, we become again. We are born somewhere else, like animals, hungry ghosts, titans, devas, like that. We are born again. That is to be understood. That is right understanding. If not, it is wrong understanding. If that means, if you do not understand, if you do not accept re-becoming means become again. If you don't accept re-becoming, that is a wrong view. You see? So, natti ayang loko, natti paro loko. Then natti mata. Some people think they don't see the importance of supporting parents, helping, supporting parents, respecting parents. They don't see that it is good. They always think that is bad. You don't want to do. It's not your duty. It's not your duty. That is how you think. Some people think that it's not our duty. We don't want to support parents. So they don't support parents. Why? Wrong understanding. Wrong understanding. Natti mata, natti pita. They think that no purpose, no point respecting parents, supporting parents. Then natti satta opapatika. Some people, they don't accept that there are spontaneous beings. There are beings, they are born without the unification of parents. They are called spontaneous beings, such as deities, devas, hungry ghosts. They have no parents. They manifest because of their karma. So they manifest without parents. So they are called spontaneous beings. That is to be understood. If we can understand that, that is right understanding. If we don't accept this, if we don't understand this, that is what is called wrong understanding. And some people, they don't believe, they don't accept that there are some monastic, some contemplative ones who have developed their mind and reached different stages, such as stream mantra, once written, non-written, like that. They don't accept these things. They don't believe these things. We We don't want to believe, but we have to accept if there are facts. We have to accept. The Buddha has given us freedom of thought, 100% freedom of thought. We have to get the maximum benefit of this. We have to rationalize, we have to think, we have to develop our intelligence and wisdom so that we can understand things better. So friends, in such a way, we have to have right understanding. Right understanding, when you have right understanding, you know what is good and bad, what is merit and demerit, what is wholesome and unwholesome. With that right understanding, you come to understand further things. What are the further things? You can then understand the Four Noble Truths. Understanding the Four Noble Truths, that is understanding level. If you understand the Four Noble Truths, that itself is your right understanding. What are the Four Noble Truths? Unsatisfactoriness, cause of unsatisfactoriness, cessation of unsatisfactoriness, and the path leading to the cessation of unsatisfactoriness. Unsatisfactoriness is the truth in the world. It is the truth in the world. It is the common truth. It is the one truth in the world. This truth is truth for all beings in the world. Wherever beings, they all face unsatisfactoriness. Dukkha, the Pali term is dukkha. When there is dukkha, we have to understand dukkha as dukkha. Then we have to understand the cause of dukkha as cause of dukkha. Then we have to realize the cessation of dukkha as the cessation of dukkha. For that, the path is given, the Noble Eightfold Path. That is to be developed. So, this can be done only with right understanding. So, the Buddha gave us the path. Buddha said, this is the best path. I recited the stanza at the beginning of this talk. Buddha said, Magga Nattangiko Setto. Of all paths, there are many paths leading to many places. There are many paths. Whatever path, the Buddha said, whatever path, Magga Nattangiko Setto, of all paths, the Noble Eightfold Path is the best. It is the best path, heading to the attainment of liberation, attainment of emancipation, Nibbana. That is why it is called the best way, best path. Of all paths, the Noble Eightfold Path is the best. Magga Nattangiko Setto. Then the Buddha said, Satchanang Chaturo Pada. Of all truth, whatever truth, people say this is truth, this is truth. Whatever truth, of all truths, the Four Noble Truths are the best. Satchanang Chaturo Pada. Then the Buddha said, Virago Setto Dhammanang. Of all Dhamma, Viraga, dispassion, is the best. Then said, Dipadanancha Chakuma. Of all bipeds, all two-footed, Buddha is the best. So friends, the Buddha taught us the path. Buddha showed us the path. Buddha said, you yourself have to tread on the path. Even the Buddha can't take us on the path. Buddha said, Akkhataro Tathagata. Tummehi kichang atabbang. You yourself have to make effort. You yourself have to tread the path. Tathagata, the Buddhas are the shower of the path. Buddha showed the path. Buddha said, this is the path. It's our duty. We ourselves have to tread the path. So the path is very clear. That is the eightfold path. Of the eight, the first one we talk about the first one. That is the right understanding. If we have right understanding, then we start to think. We conceptualize. We have thoughts. That is what is called right thoughts. That is the second one. If our understanding is right, our thoughts are right. If our understanding is wrong, our thoughts are wrong. Wrong thoughts then. Then if we think properly, if we are conceptualized properly, then we can verbalize properly. That is our speech, which is right speech. Then if we have good thoughts, our word is good. Right speech. This is the path. So we think, we talk, and we act. Then right action. Right action. When we have right thoughts, right speech, and right action, we live righteously. That is what is called right living, right livelihood. We lead a righteous life, right livelihood. When we live righteously, we are not clumsy, we are not lazy, we are not lethargic. We want to work, we want to do, we want to help others. We are energetic. In society, we do many things for the benefit of me, for the benefit of my family, for the benefit of society, for the benefit of the country, benefit of the world. We work. For that, we have to have good energy. Effort. We have to make effort. Without effort, you can gain nothing. We have to make effort. That is what is called right effort. This is Buddhism. This is Dhamma. This is how we practice Dhamma in daily life. Right effort. We have to make right effort to live in society for the benefit of ourselves and benefit of others. Right effort. Then we think that why not mindful? Why not we practice? Why don't we practice? Practice what? Mindfulness. Now we come to the meditation part, which is very important part of the path. First thing is morality, sila. Then samadhi. Samadhi is the meditation, which is the third step of the path. Third step. As Buddhists, we have to do three things: dana, sila, bhavana. Dana is generosity. Practice generosity, charity. When practice generosity, Buddha taught us how to practice generosity. Buddha said, be happy first. Be virtuous first. Think of you are virtuous. Whether you are observing precepts. Observe precepts. Be virtuous first. And then think of a virtuous person. And then give. When you give, the Buddha said, give what is earned righteously. Righteously earned thing. Then Buddha further said, before you give, be happy. With a delighted heart. Start your giving. With a delighted heart. Be happy. With a happy mind. At the beginning of your dana, your action. Then when you are engaged in it, suppose you are offering dana, when you give, be happy. And then at the end, after giving, after doing your action, be happy. Three ways. At the beginning, middle, and the end. Be happy. That is how we have to give. When you give things properly, nicely arranged. That's how the Buddha said. When you give something to others, we have to arrange it nicely. If it is something to be cooked, cooked nicely, good. Then offer it. And when you give it with your own hand. Give things with your own hands. Not that you send something. Okay, go ahead. You give this to the temple, to the monk, that particular monk. You simply send it. Not send, but better you offer it by yourself. Then you can be more happy. That is how we to give. When we give, the Buddha's instruction is give expecting nothing. If you give little thing and expect big thing, that is not the real giving. Even expecting, you don't want to expect anything, even a thanks. You give. Why? Why you give? When you give your craving. Understand that you give craving. Then you can cut off your craving whenever you give. You can reduce your craving. One day you can totally cut off your craving. So giving is to be practiced. Generosity is to be practiced as a part of our daily activities. The second, practice meditation. Meditation, there are two levels of meditation. Samatha meditation and Vipassana meditation. Samatha means calm down yourself, calm down your body, calm down your mind. Then you can come to the state of calmness, tranquility, serenity. That is necessary. When you practice samatha in such a way, you can switch to insight as well. Insight is vipassana. Buddhist meditation is not only samatha. The Buddha has taught us something new, something very important, which is quite unparalleled. It is the uniqueness in the teaching of the Buddha, which is vipassana. Vipassana means you see properly, penetratively. You see specially. What can you see properly? When you see properly, when you see correctly, specially, what can you see? You can see three things, three marks of all things. What are the three? Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and soullessness. These are called three marks, three characteristics of existence. You can see these three in all things. These are the three things to be seen. So, for that purpose, we have to develop Vipassana meditation. So, when we practice Buddhism, we have to practice this meditation as well. Samatha meditation and Vipassana meditation. Now, on the path, when we come to right effort, we make effort to meditate. Without effort, even you can't meditate. Sometimes the people might think that when the practitioners are just sitting, you don't want to make any effort, just go sit cross-legged, just sitting like sleeping. What do they do? Some people might think, what do they do? Just sitting. So, without effort you can't meditate. You have to have good effort. With that effort, you come to right mindfulness. That is called right mindfulness. What is right mindfulness? The mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of mental object. Four ways. These are called 4 establishments of mindfulness. These are the things to be developed when practice meditation. When we practice these 4 establishments of mindfulness, we can come to the state of calmness, samadhi, that is called samadhi. That samadhi is called right concentration, right samadhi, perfect samadhi. This perfect samadhi can be gained only with the support of the first 7 factors of the enlightenment, the first 7 factors of the path. You know, of the Noble Eightfold Path, there are 8 factors. With the support of the first 7 factors, if you can gain concentration, that is called right concentration. So that means to gain right concentration, we have to understand, we have to get the knowledge of the first 7 factors: right understanding, right thoughts, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness. With the support of these 7, we can gain right concentration, Samma Samadhi. So, if we have right concentration, then our mind is quite clear. Then we can apply Buddhism, apply meditation in our daily life. We can be mindful. That is very important in society. We have to be mindful. The Buddha said, when you go forward, be mindful. When you come back, be mindful. When you are standing, be mindful. What is mindful? Stay there, right there. Understand what you are doing now. Give your attention to your own actions. Give attention. Be aware. Be alert. That is what is mindfulness. You are here. You are here physically and mentally. That is mindfulness. So when practice mindfulness, Buddha's instructions are very clear. Buddha said, when you eat, be mindful. Now you are going to take your lunch after this. Be mindful when you eat. If you talk too many things, too much talking, you don't know what you are doing. When you eat, try to reduce your talk. Give attention to your action. Understand and do only one action at a time. Suppose you are mixing. You mix the food with a spoon or fork. Then give attention to that. When you put things into mouth, understand that you put things into mouth. And then you start to chew it. When you chew it, don't mix. Mixing and chewing both don't go together. Should not go together. Only one. Either mix things or chewing. That is how you have to practice mindfulness. Then you give attention to one object, one action at a time. That is what I want to, that is what I meant. So that is mindful. When Buddha said, when you eat, be mindful. When you bite, be mindful. You bite something like apple or any other thing. When you bite, be mindful. When you taste, be mindful. When you swallow it, be mindful. Whatever you are doing, when you bend in your limbs, be mindful. When you stretch your limbs, be mindful. When you use your clothing, wearing your clothing, be mindful. So, all these things, Buddha said, be mindful. Mindful means give attention to that. Then you are here, then you are practicing, then you are applying Buddhism in daily life. Even when you are using restroom, Buddha said, even when you are using restroom, when you use restroom, be mindful. That's how the Buddha said. So, that mindfulness is the best thing. If you are mindful, what happens? If you are mindful, no stress. If you are unmindful, stress. Full of stress. Depression. Disgusting. Disappointment. All these because of not mindful. If you are mindful, if you are doing things now, you are living here, light-hearted, less burden. That is why, friends, we want to practice Buddhism in daily life. So when we practice Buddhism in this way, being mindful, we can develop our concentration. It is because of that concentration, right concentration, we can understand the Four Noble Truths. We can realize the Four Noble Truths. We can realize the Four Noble Truths. With that, we can come to the last step of the path, being the 10th factor of the path. So the path becomes tenfold path. With that, we understand, we realize the right liberation. That liberation is called enlightenment, the arahantship. This is how the Buddha taught us the Dhamma. This Dhamma is to be practiced in our daily life so that we can live happily, peacefully in this society. And one day, we can realize Dhamma and attain supreme bliss of Nibbana. May we attain supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, we have 18 minutes for Q&A. If we don't have enough time and you have more time, you can write down your questions if you don't want to speak on the mic. We have 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock question and answer session. So for those who would like to speak on the mic now, you're welcome. For those who want to write down their questions for 2 o'clock, you're also welcome, because we may not be able to answer all the questions now. Okay, first up. Whose hand is first up? Question?
Bhante, yesterday you mentioned about when walking meditation, we can practice samatha and vipassana. Can you explain?
Well, walk-in meditation, when you practice walk-in meditation, when you give attention, you are concentrating. That is what is called concentration of mind, is called samatha. At the beginning, when you practice, you see, you give attention and understand the movements of the food. Then you are practicing samatha. And whenever you understand the change in nature, then you can understand the starting and ending of the action. Like heal up. You see the release, you see means see your mind. Through your mind you see that starting, and it has a process, and then you can understand it's finished. The action is finished. Action has a starting point and ending point. Starting, ending. Then starting, ending. Starting, ending. Starting, ending. Starting, ending. You see the arising, perishing. Arising, perishing. So later on you can understand this is a whole process, but it is like a vibration. Changing, changing, changing. Anicca, anicca, anicca. Then anicca leads to dukkha and anatta. That is how you see the vipassana, 3 characteristics. Okay? First part is samatha. In all meditation, first part is samatha. It depends on how you concentrate. Concentration part is called samatha. Whatever, we can't say that this from this part to this part is samatha, this to this vipassana. Sometimes the people, there are some people, they have good concentration. Then maybe at the very beginning you see the arising and perishing. So samatha and vipassana, you can't say from this point to this point is samatha, this point to this point vipassana. It depends on your mind, the maturity of your mind. Immature mind cannot see this. Only matured mind, developed mind can see the arising and perishing nature. Whenever you see the arising perishing nature, that is where you are switching to vipassana.
Next question.
Bhante, does eating of meat means approval to killing? You were saying earlier on that you either kill yourself, ask somebody to kill, or you approve killing. So does eating meat indirectly means approving of killing itself?
This you don't want to ask me. You can think whether you are approving or not. Who should stop this cycle? That's a cycle. The slaughter, the shopper, and the consumer. It's a cycle. Who should stop? Can the slaughterer stop it? He never do. And the shopper? No. We have to stop it. Stop the cycle. Break the cycle.
Any others? Dhamma questions? Meditation questions? Or one?
Hello, Bante. Today, you teach us about 6 objects. I only remember 3: form, perceptions, emotions. What are the other 3?
What are the 6?
Are you talking about those?
What? Not 6, 5. 5 aggregates.
5 aggregates.
5 aggregates are form, feelings, perception, volitional formation, and consciousness. Consciousness. Mind. Consciousness is mind. Form is body, this body. 4 elements. Earth, water, fire, air. This form is called form. That's the form aggregates. Feelings are your sensations. Perception is what you recognize. When you see something, you have eye, the form, then eye consciousness arises. These 3 come together. That meeting of the 3 is called contact. With contact, then there arises feeling. With feeling, then arises perception, perception. That is how perception takes place. So perception means you recognize it. With feeling, you recognize it. That is called perception aspect, perception aggregate. And then volition. Volition is your thought. You think and act. Volition, your karma in other words. Volition is your karma. Then consciousness is your mind. Those are the 5 things here within you. Nobody else, no little ones here to take us here, there.
Good morning, Bhante. Is it correct to say that memory resides in perception? Memory resides in perception. When something happens, we remember it. And where does it stay?
Memory, we have memory. With memory, we compare things. When we see something, that is what I said the other day. I think I said the camera with 6 lenses. You take pictures through 6 senses, through 6 lenses. Then you keep all these in your mind. That's memory. And when something happens, you compare it with it. And with that, you can understand the nature of it. So,
Do you want to know where is the mind, is it? Where
mind,
it resides, where the memory resides.
memory is through our brain. Memory resides in it is the repository. Brain is the repository for memory. But the mind is not located there. Mind gives energy, just like the bulb. Bulb is there. If there is no electricity, bulb is not illuminating. So the electricity is the mind.
To access the memory from your brain.
But Bhante, that means when we die, this physical body, this form is not around. Those that we hear, see, and deposited in the mind will disappear.
Not the mind, but the brain.
The brain, sorry, yeah.
Brain is disappeared.
But
Mind is not disappeared.
What about those that deposited in the mind?
Deposited in the mind might stay there, and later on, whenever those are the defilements. Later on, when we practice meditation, those are the defilements, sansaric defilement. They are called sansaric defilement. Not only what we have done in this very life. If it is so, it's very easy to remove all these defilements and cut off, exterminate all this easily. If it is within one lifetime, but not so. In our mind, immemorial. We can't remember. We don't know. In samsara, too many a birth. We have done many good deeds, bad deeds both. They all are in our mind. That is what is called karma, in other words. Karma is there. So we have to understand those defilements, and we have to remove these defilements, cleanse this. Then only we can attain enlightenment.
Any others?
Good afternoon, Bhante. Yeah, I would like to ask, so every time we die, we get reborn. So what happens when we attain to enlightenment? Where do we go?
When we attain enlightenment, there is no more defilements in our mind. As long as we have defilements in our mind is like with some kind of glue. As long as we have glue, wherever it touches, it sticks there. Just like that, when we die, we cling to a place, cling to this world, that world. That is what happened for the worldly mind. The unworldly mind, when the Buddha, the enlightened ones, when they cleanse their mind, no more glue in the mind. Therefore, no place to cling to. That is what happens. That means after enlightened ones passing away, they are not born again, because there is no more craving. As long as we have craving is a glue. So Buddha's mind has no such things, no craving at all, no place to cling to. It's like the given simile is the light, the lamp. When the lamp has wick and oil, it is burning. The Buddha's life is like the light lamp is burning without oil, only wick. So when the wick is burned, the light is gone. It's just like that. Then you can't say where it went, the flame. You can't say where the flame went. Like that. That is the extinction, sort of extinction. Extinguishing. That is what happened.
Last two questions.
Dear Bhante, according to the Buddha, since we're on the topic of death, what happens from the point of clinical death to the next rebirth? There's so much cultural misconceptions, so I thought maybe it would be good for you to help us understand it better. Thank you.
Clinical death.
Heart stops.
Huh?
Let's define clinical death as when the heart stops. The body loses its temperature and there is no breath.
Yeah, death is whatever the nature of death. If you are worldling, you are born again. You are born somewhere else according to your karma.
She wants to know what happens in between this birth and the next birth.
In this birth and next birth, things happen according to karma. That's the consciousness. After your death, consciousness together with other factors, not only consciousness, feeling, perception, volitional formations, together with this and even subtle forms, all these together, the 5 aggregates together with subtle forms, it takes another form. That is what is called energy. All these are called energy. You know better, the energy takes another form. So, you are born somewhere else according to your karma. The karma is what is called volitional formations. Of the 5 aggregates, one aggregate is called volitional formations. The volition is your karma. According to karma, karma leads you to the right place. According to what you have done. The Buddha said all beings die. All beings die. Because all beings were born. Sabbe satta marissanti. All beings die. Maranang tanghi jivitang. This life ends with death. Only this life ends. This life ends with death. Maranang tanghi jivitang. Yatha kammang gamissanti. Thereafter what happens? You go according to your karma. You go then according to your karma. You go means your consciousness together with other parts. The consciousness takes place, take another place, move to another place according to the karma. Yata kammang gamissanti punya papa palubaka, depending on punya and papa, depending on good and bad. Those who have done good, they will be born in heavens. Those done bad, unwholesome, will be born in hells. That is how the Buddha said.
Is it an immediate? Sorry, what I want to know is the time lapse. Is that an immediate rebirth? I die right now, if I die, what happens? Is it an immediate rebirth? Because we in our culture, we have a 49-day prayer.
No,
thing.
those are beliefs.
Okay.
49 days, 59 days, those are beliefs. Immediately, it might happen immediately or later. Both ways. If the destination is ready, immediately. If the destination is not yet ready, not immediately. That means some beings, they die here. Right after that, since they have suppose done good deeds, full of merit, right after that, you will be born in heaven. Once you die here, you will be born out there in the heaven. There are some beings, they are expecting something. So in such a case, they can't be born there. For instance, suppose a person expect, determined, and all the time she is doing good deeds, thinking that may I be the daughter of this same mom, same mother. Whatever she does, she always think of this. And the mother herself think that may my daughter be my own daughter next time also, next birth also, like that. So when in such a case, when the mother passed away, she will be born somewhere. Then the daughter, when she dies, she wants to be born in the same mother's womb. Her will is that. The mother's will is the same. So in such a case, the mother is now, though the mother was born there, she is not yet married. So what happened? You have to wait until the mom get married and the right time. And such things happen. That is why sometimes you might have heard some people say that after death I was roaming, sometimes weeks, months roaming. So such things happen. So we don't want to know all these things. We can't know all these things. Our senses are limited. What invisible things beyond our perception are the more. So let's understand our own thing. Within this, what happens here, now, my thoughts, my feeling, that is mindfulness, that is meditation, that is how we apply Buddhism in daily life. So friends, let's try to apply Buddhism in daily life, Dhamma in daily life, so that we can live happily, peacefully. May you live alone in peace. May you attain supreme bliss of Nibbana.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.